Thanks so much for having me here today. Who could have imagined years upon years ago, that my life would have been so transformed that I'd be standing here on a stage talking to perhaps some of the brightest minds of this and the next generation. This statement here by Paulo Freire, when he said this, I was just 10 years old. And who could have imagined that 15 years later I would be here in a prison cell, looking at the start of a 12-year sentence, wondering where my life was about to go, thinking and asking myself, where's the support? You know, if the headlines are to be believed, then I dare say that many people think that prison is like a hotel, it's a holiday camp. You know, I heard people say, 3 square meals a day, PlayStations, sleep all the time. Let me tell you something. It is nothing like a hotel. If so, I've never stayed in a hotel where I can touch the toilet bowl from my bed. I hope that never happens again, or had to share a space, an 8x6 with up to 3 other men. But you see, I made that choice, although I'd made that huge mistake, I'd made that choice that I wasn't going to remain neutral. And whilst I was in custody, I saw changes happening in the outside. And I saw the ease with which people were turning towards alcohol, the drastic measures young people were taking up to turn to arms, to form groups that many people see as gangs. And again, if the headlines are to believe, then they're feral children, they can't be helped. This is a desperate situation, it's the world going out of control and all the rest of it. And the reality is that I myself knew that I'd been involved in a circle of friends and that ultimately my choices had led to my reactions, but we weren't feral. And in fact, we're dealing with very individual, very impressionable young people that need that right mindset, they need that support. So what did I decide to do? I turned my hand to using the skills that I had and the skills that many of you do, the reading, the writing, being able to add up and take away and provide support to other people that were in custody. I taught guys how to read, I supported them through their personal crisis. But you see, the picture is much bigger than that, because if we think about prisons, I'm going to break a couple of your misconceptions here. Besides it not being anything at all like the hotel, there is a bigger scheme at play, because the reality is that the prison population is just growing all the time. If anything, we're building more prisons. And it's an illusion. I believe it's a false economy to think that, that 87,000 that are in custody will come back out and take their place in society without making mistakes along the way and being drawn back into their criminal circles. And if we look at the cost of it, it costs £77,000 per year per person to keep them in custody. Now, just imagine what we could do with 77,000. Yeah? I believe it's cheaper to send someone to Eton and get a world-class education, or even to stay in the Hilton and have all those fancy back rubs and, the champagne breakfast. And when you think about the actual total figure, I've got to be completely honest with you, the maths is the one part of my life that was never a strong part. It was a bit like trying to study French at school. But when I put it into the calculator, this is what I got back. And it doesn't matter how big the calculator is, how many digits it holds, it always just comes up with something along those lines. But you see, that's not the worst part. You see, for all of the money that's being spent, it only actually ever works on 25%, because we know the reoffending rate stands at a staggering 75%. That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. There's a term bandied around in psychology, which is insanity, which says to keep doing something that doesn't work and expecting to get a different result. Well, this is that. Because if you think about it, we just keep, you imagine you're throwing away billions. It's billions and billions and billions of pounds. And when I try to do the sums, because I'm always trying to do the sums, this is what came up. Did he really just do that? I want to see the tweets after this. So the question is why? Why do we do this? Of course, society needs to be protected. The most heinous criminals need to be locked up, but only a handful will never see the light of day again. And the rest of them will all come out eventually. We've got to deal with the perception versus the reality. If the headlines are to be believed, then this is just a dissident world away. Yeah, these are young people we can never engage with. What we tend to forget is that these young people are in fact someone's son, someone's brother, someone's auntie, someone's cousin, and in some cases, for many of them, someone's father. And we can't hide that illusion because we've seen it in the riots, we've seen it with the groups of people that we see on the streets, that the headlines will believe that every young person's involved in a gang. That's just simply not the case. So what did I decide to do? I set up a project called SOS Gangs Project, and SOS Gangs Project was the first complete ex-offender-led project in the country. It's so unique in its terms and phrases that every single year we're seen as a project of best practice, yet unfortunately some of the practices aren't yet to be adopted. But what it is realistically is that tailor-made holistic support on both sides of the fence delivered by someone who's been there, done it. If you think about it, if you wanted to take your car to a mechanic, would you take him to a dentist or would you take him to actually somebody who knows the inside of a car? You take him to a mechanic. And when we're dealing with ex-offenders, those that are coming through, when we're talking about transforming communities, you need that unique credibility. You need people that have been there, come through that cycle, and know exactly what are the pitfalls to help young people succeed. When we're dealing with young people, and I hate to say it because I know, this is my own personal bugbear, I know that when the riots happened, a lot of people jumped on the bandwagon explaining why what they're doing is so important, and I'm not undermining anyone else who's doing positive work with young people, but I've yet to see a true holistic model. And to me, a true holistic model deals with the individual, their peer group, and the community at large, because these are the transformations that I see when we're working with young people. By providing that personal support through someone who's trusted, we can work with that person by drawing them alongside, seeing the problems exactly the way they see them. And then, by doing that, we can look at their immediate peer group. The dysfunctional family, well, actually, is there ever a functional family? It remains to be the ultimate question. But to deal with them and to deal with their peer group, and then to help them create changes within their lives that can affect the larger community. And although we're ex-offenders, the critical thing is we're not about actually saying, oh, that's okay, the offender's fine. That's not what it's about. It's actually about protecting and stopping that person from reoffending by giving them opportunities for change that reduce the likelihood of them reoffending and reduce the likelihood of them creating more victims. So, the tale of the tape. SOS Project now has been running for coming up to 6 years. We've dealt with well over 500 clients, and to date, we've managed to smash the reoffending rate from 75% just down to 20%. In fact, it's actually slightly less than that. But the reality is, out of so many clients, just 47 have been recalled, and over 2/3 have undertaken some form of education, training, and employment. They're leading lifestyle changes, and it's critical for us to see, because it means that even in a time where there's cuts and everything like that, changes can happen. And by having the client at the center of the service, we can push past their negative associations, their negative habits, and then go on for them to create positive peer impacts. You see, in a time with cuts and austerity measures, even if we have less, we must always bear in mind that we must always have more, because young people need to be included regardless of their background, regardless of what offences they've committed. Young people need that hand to help them make changes. That's it. Thank you.